Zaboomafoo
with the Crab Brothers.
While walking in the woods one day, Chris and Martin saw something strange. A little leaping lemur who liked to bounce and play. They followed their new bouncing friend, not knowing where this adventure would end. The animals were heading just around the bend.
Where they going?
I don't know.
How do we get there?
Come on, let's go. Me and you and Zaboomafoo. Come along and see what's new. We're doing the things that animals do. New animal friends to see. Animal Junction's the place to be.
Fish charging, baboons are leaping, wild dogs running and nobody's sleeping.
Me and you and Zaboomafoo. Come along and see what's new. We're doing the things that animals do. Me and you and Zaboomafoo. Come along and see what's new. At Animal Junction, we're waiting for you.
Zaboomafoo.
Hey now, hey wow, here's how. Come and read between the lines. Come on, come in, begin. The world awaits. Between the lines, between the covers of a book, it's time to look between the lines. Behold the tales beyond the tales behind the door. Become explore. Come in between the lions. Begin between the lions. Be here between the lions. Be here between the lions. Between the lions, between the covers of a book, it's time to look between the lines. Behold the tales beyond the tales behind the door. Become explore. Come in between the lions. Begin between the lions. Be here between the lions.
comes to play with us whenever we may need him. Barney can be your friend too if you just make believe him.
You're getting to be a big boy.
I'm just a kid who's 4. Each day I grow some more. I like exploring. I'm Caillou. So many things to do. Each day is something new. I'll share them with you. I'm Caillou. My world is turning, changing each day. With Mommy and Daddy, I'm finding my way. Growing up is not so tough, except when I've had enough. But there's lots of fun stuff. I'm Caillou. Caillou, Caillou, I'm Caillou. That's me.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Science rules. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Inertia is a property of matter. Bill
Nye the Science Guy.
Bill. T-minus 10 seconds. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Clifford needed Emily, so she chose him for her own. And her love made Clifford grow so big that the Howards had to leave their home. Clifford's the best friend anyone could know. He's the greatest dog ever. I really think so. Clifford's so loyal, he's there when you call. I love Clifford, the big red dog. So they packed up a family car.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff from PBS Western Reserve, and we are moving into the second session rather, of our Cyberchase, Green It Up. Tonight, we're going to talk about container gardens and composting. We're excited for you to be here. Take an opportunity, if you want to right now, to go up to the upper right-hand corner of your screen. There's a QR code. That'll take you to the Cyberchase Green It Up website. But also keep in mind for our activities tonight, we've got 2 activities that will be going on. First of all, we're going to be spending some time in container gardens. So earlier when you had registered, and even when you got your updates, it asked that you go out and purchase some, just find some things to maybe plant some seeds in. And it can be anything that you want, get some soil and a packet of seeds. And then the second activity we're going to do is a composting activity, and you'll need just find an old mayonnaise jar. I'm just trying to make sure all the different things that you can have for that, but just keep that in mind. And we're gonna if you've been outside, if you want to grab some old brown leaves or brown articles, some green grass, maybe some grass clippings and some soil, but we'll go over that here in a little bit. We appreciate your time this evening. We're also going to be reading aloud 2 And if you like the books that you see, and there'll be the information available in the presentation, feel free to grab those and go to your local library and check those books out. Like I said, this is the PBS Western Reserve Cyberchase Green It Up virtual exploration. Tonight, we will be looking at veggie and fruit container gardens. That'll be a lot of fun. And composting, and that's all connected with our friends from Cyberchase. And if you're not familiar at all with Cyberchase, Cyberchase is America's longest running math series. It's engaged millions of children in the fun and challenge of math and STEM for more than 17 years. This animated series tells the story of a team of curious kids. If you're not familiar with those kids, they've been summered into cyberspace to outwit and outsmart the villain hacker. And they use math and problem solving skills. So Cyberchase proves basically that math is everywhere and anyone can use it to make the world better. We air Cyberchase on PBS Western Reserve. And check your local listings, but we do offer Cyberchase. We broadcast that on Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock. So in the morning. So take an opportunity if you're up and around on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Check out the folks from Cyberchase if you're not already doing that already. So tonight we're going to talk about fruit and veggie container gardening. And we always kind of start off with, why are they important? Why are container gardens? Why are veggie gardens? Why are fruit gardens so important? And what are they? What exactly is a container garden? What exactly do we mean by that? And so the folks from Cyberchase will be showing us some of that here in just a bit. But as always, during our Cyberchase Green It Up explorations, we begin with a big idea. So tonight's big idea in relation to that container gardening is that you don't need a lot of land or you don't need a complicated setup to pretty much grow your own food. And we'll talk quite a bit about what the importance of growing your own food is. You can pretty much grow fruits and vegetables and herbs in a classroom, in your home, or even in a community garden. And we're going to see examples of all of those. Growing your own food can really help you make healthy choices. It helps save you money, and it also helps the environment. And the nice thing about growing your own food is you control what pesticides and chemicals you use or don't use, and the amount of water that you use, so nothing is wasted. And then last, you're always making a green space. You're also making a green space that gives you oxygen and provides homes for insects and other animals. So that's tonight's big idea in relation to container gardens. So let's take a closer look at those folks from Cyberchase, and they're going to be dealing with a couple different types of gardens. So make sure that when you're watching, think about what 3 things the garden, they'll reference that in this video. What was different about the 2 gardens that you'll see here in a moment that the Cyber Squad made? And then why do you think they wanted to grow your own food? Hey, let's take a closer look.
This is harder than I thought. We can't plant a garden around here either. There's no soil. Come on.
We got soil here.
But no water. And the buildings are blocking the sun. You need all 3 for a healthy garden, Didge.
Isn't there anywhere in Factoria with good soil, water, and sun?
This is not good.
This is not good at all.
Serene!
Thought you were upset with us.
I was, but I know you're trying to help. You're the Cyber Squad. I love you guys.
Aw, we love you too.
Granny had a beautiful garden when she was little. I'll show you a picture.
Wow, look at all the tomatoes. So much of everything.
Do you really think we could grow vegetables here again?
There's definitely lots of sun. We can get water from that creek.
And the soil underneath is still healthy. You can tell by the way it sticks together. Look, there's no sand or rocks.
Then this place has everything that plants need. Sun, soil, and lots of water.
So let's make a garden.
Whoa! It really does look like a rainbow.
A healthy and delicious tasting rainbow, too.
Yum, a real tomato.
Wait till Hacker finds out they don't have to eat his junk food anymore.
Release the bunnies!
No! Don't eat that!
How do we get him out of here?
Be right back.
The boss will be really proud of us, Dee Dee.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell him.
Chase them away, Rosie.
Quick thinking, Zorine.
Go! Thanks, guys, but the garden's ruined.
Perk up! The ditch has more seeds. You can still grow your own food.
We can grow our own healthy food, so we don't have to rely on Hacker to feed us.
Yes, we're with you, Zorine. What do we do?
Grab all these you can and follow me.
All these balconies are the same, right?
Yes, each balcony has 12 tiles.
That means each balcony has the same area.
Let's fill it up.
Problem. If we do that, there's no space left to step onto the balcony and water the plants.
Okay, so what if we take a few away? 8 containers. That looks about right.
And everybody can arrange the containers however they want.
Right. That won't change the amount of area, just the shape of it. Everyone, each balcony will hold about 8 containers. Place them where they fit, fill them with dirt, water from your apartments, and grow your gardens.
Yeah!
Let's think about this for a moment. We had an opportunity to see the folks from Cyberchase, and they made 2 different types of gardens. But what were the 3 things that the gardens needed? Do you remember what they talked about? One of them in the beginning of the first episode, it talked about 3 things. And one of them is the sun, needs sun. It needs water, right? A garden needs water. And of course, it's kind of one of those more obvious things is it needs soil. And if you remember when they were looking at the larger garden and he actually picked up the soil and said, boy, that soil is really good. It sticks together. It's got a good combination of sand and all that's necessary in good soil. So those are the 3 things that they really needed, what the garden needed on both of the gardens. Now, if you think about, if you're watching this now, talk a bit with your group or with your parents and what was different about the 2 gardens. They made 2 different types of gardens, and one of them, if you think about it, remember the first one, the first garden was in a much bigger area, wasn't it? It was much like when you think about a garden that you grow at home, and someone talks about their home garden, that's the kind of garden that you envision it being, right? Kind of that big garden on a big plot of land. But unfortunately, in this case, the rabbits got in there, right? That were released by Hacker and his folks, and they had to bring the cat in to get the rabbits out of there. And then the second garden was more of what we'll talk about in a bit here, and that's more container garden. And if you think about all the residents, when they brought forward all the different containers, they had to kind of figure out exactly how those containers would fit on those balconies, right? Because the balconies were the same size. So so think about how mathematically they had to arrange those containers in order for them to fit on that balcony. But remember, everybody had the same size balcony. So what was nice about it was they had multiple containers and everyone could grow something different in each of the container. And then last, the folks at Cyberchase, those folks all wanted to grow their own food. Remember what they said, one of the reasons why is because they were tired of Hacker and sending them all his junk food. So keep that in mind. Those were the kind of the overview of what the Cyberchase gang did in regards to gardening. So let's take another closer look, and we talk about community gardening. And this is an example of a garden can grow just about everywhere. So let's take a closer look at this community garden.
All right, go ahead and walk. Look for those organic materials. You can look on the ground, in the beds. Students are really engaged. They're excited to learn about the gardens. And the impact on the students has been amazing. It just really lets them explore and use that curiosity to learn.
We built our first garden over in first grade, taking out a space that was where people dumped furniture. And we just slowly changed one area at a time each year.
We started a couple of years ago by putting in a few beds, just planting with the kids and trying to figure out gardening and working it into the curriculum. We went through the Nevada State Standards and the Next Generation Standards, and we wrote curriculum based on that. You'll see the art teacher out there with the kids. There's math, science, there's everything. When they're working in the gardens, it's all tied to our standards.
We want to be able to feed our worms, and we want to be able to add to our compost. We typically do a garden lesson at least 2 to 3 times a month. Part of our science curriculum is looking at plants and nature, so we thought it was a great asset for students to learn how they can reuse scraps and soil and worms to help make our soil better.
An organic thing is something that humans eat and then they throw away, but they can actually put it in a compost or in the dirt. I think this is more important than math and science because they're helping nature grow.
Initially, I just wanted my students to know that vegetables don't come from the grocery store. They come from the soil, from the ground. They grow, and it's a process. And to do a lesson once in a classroom with a lima bean in the window is not enough.
We're checking if the worms, they pooped or they peed. We check it by this. We need to pee so we can water our flowers and make them grow more.
Students are actually in the gardens every day, even if it's only briefly. So sometimes it's something, just a 10-minute activity where they're maintaining.
I check to see if the soil is moist by dipping my finger in. The last thing I have to do is turn the compost bins around. I gotta see if there's any problems, and if there is, I check off yes and then write it down here. I think one day maybe I'll have a garden of my own.
It might look like they're running around, but they're really not. They have very specific jobs, and they're planting and they're harvesting and they're checking for bugs and they're collecting seeds. They're planning farmers markets so that we can sell the produce and make money to fund the gardens. The enthusiasm for learning is just incredible. You can start by planting a few seeds in a pot. The kids, they'll respond.
Come on under the tree. Is it organic?
They get to go outside and teach lessons in a different way than what they would have had they been inside their classroom. There's a purpose for being outside and in the garden.
That video is very interesting in that it gives you an opportunity to see, and so I'll ask these questions. Prior to the video, where did you think plants could grow? Now, granted, we watched the Cyberchase video and you learned that, you know, a garden and a plant, those plants can grow in a big open garden like we're so used to, or they can grow in containers. But in this video, really talked about the different places that plants could grow. And then they talked a bit about urban gardens. And so when you think about what you saw in these videos and what you saw in the Cyberchase video, why do you think those urban gardens are important? They're obviously, they serve a purpose. And so, you know, think about that for a minute. Why are those urban gardens so important? And then really back, we talked about it a bit ago, and the Cyberchase gang dealt with that, is what are the benefits of growing your own food? as we talked about that big idea earlier, the big idea was you really control exactly what you want to grow. You know exactly what possibly what some I'll call it anti-bug treatment or fertilizer that you use, or the amount of water. That's really the benefits of growing your own food. So let's take a closer look. We've got an activity that we're going to do here, and I hope that you had an opportunity to get maybe a container for do some planting, some soil, and some seeds. All pretty easy things to find at your local dollar store. And so this activity that we're going to do, and I will change the camera here in a minute, is that we're going to talk about planting our own garden. So let's take a closer look here. I'm going to start my video up, and I'm going to do my stop share. And here you see I've got a setup to plant my own, and I'm going to plant here. If you notice, you'll see that I've got sweet corn. So I'm going to grow sweet corn here, and as you can see, I've got sweet corn seeds here. And over here, I've got soil. So in this case, let's think about all that I have that are the three things that you need to grow. We need sun, we need soil, and we need water. I have the soil, I have the soil, I have the water right here in my spray bottle, and now I have my seeds. So what I'm going to do with this soil is I'm going to put soil in each of these little pods. And as you can see, this is something, I just grabbed one of these little devices that you can plant, little planters. I can throw 10 seeds in here, but you could do this just in a regular jar if you wanted to. You could do this like they talked about. You could do this in an old boot, which I think is funny. You could do this in an old tin can. You've got lots of options in what you could plant your seeds in. Just make sure that you've got some drainage on your device. So what I mean by drainage is, if you use a plastic container, have your mom and dad or grandpa or grandma put some holes in the bottom so that when you do water, because obviously that's one of the three things we need, that you can actually the water won't stay in there. And here are my seeds. You'll notice they're big seeds. So I'm going to put this a little more in the middle here, and you'll see that I can. I'm going to put each of these seeds in here, and you can see I'm going to put each of these in these spots because I'm going to grow sweet corn. Hopefully, I grow sweet corn. We'll see how that grows. And I'm going to plant these in here and kind of move them in place. And this is all an activity that you can do yourself. And in a minute here, I'll give you an opportunity to do that on your own. I should have picked a smaller container. I've got too many. Maybe they'll all grow. Hopefully they'll all grow, huh? So we're going to look at all of these. We're going to put these in place. I've almost used up all my seeds. I didn't realize that. So I've got all 10 seeds in here. And now I'm going to cover those seeds up with the dirt, with the rest of my dirt here. So I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put a little dirt on top of each of these seeds. Try to do a little quicker so we don't use up all our time. Let me see here. I'm getting this here, a little more dirt here. Hopefully I've got enough dirt here. I do. Just keep putting dirt in the spots. All right. And we're slowly covering up our seeds because that's really important. And you can see I'm slowly getting the seeds covered up. I actually have some more dirt here too, but that works out. Let me get a little bit more here. And I think I need to put a little bit more in this one right here. So we've got dirt. And so we've got good dirt. Now we need that. I don't want to just use up my dirt here, huh? Now we're going to add remember what they talked about. They talked about dirt, they talked about sun, and they talked about water. So I'm going to water down these seeds, and hopefully I'll take a picture and share it with all of you later on. It'll be a while. I'll grow some sweet corn. So I'm spraying these down and getting that water and getting them all taken care of. So now what I'd like you to do is we're going to go back to the screen. Let me go back to screen share. And what I'd like you to do is take an opportunity and whatever device that you have, if you've got things that you can plant in, take the time here over the next 3 minutes to work at putting some seeds in the soil in your device that you're planting in, and we'll get back together in about 2-3 minutes. Start wrapping things up. You've got about 30 seconds. So if you've not planted all your seeds, don't worry about it. We'll get back to that after we're done here. You can certainly do it later. So wrap it all up and start putting your activity away. But I'll ask the following questions of you as the timer winds down: is just make sure the container that you have has adequate drainage. Make sure that your container gets. We're all done, huh? I just put my plant, my little planting container, I put it over a spot where it'll get sunlight, and we'll see if I grow sweet corn. I think that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that. Make sure that you're remembering to water. I always try to remember to water before I go to work. And then I also usually try to water after I get home. And then you can always check, just like the girl in the last video that we watched said, you can always check the soil to make sure if the soil is too wet or too dry. So hopefully you have an opportunity to do that and grab your container and put your soil in there and put your seeds. Now we're going to do a read aloud. And this book is called Talia and the Rude Vegetables, and it's written by Linda Marshall, and it's illustrated by Francesca Assarelli. So I'm going to stop my share. Let me do this real quick here. And I'm going to stop my share. And we're going to read Talia and the Rude Vegetables. So hopefully I can get this all on the screen here. Talia and the Rude Vegetables. As she walked toward the garden shed, carrying a big pot, Talia puzzled over her grandmother's request. Could you go to the garden, please? Grandma had asked her, and bring back 7 root vegetables: onions, garlic rather, turnips, parsnips, carrots, potatoes, and rutabagas. 7 is lucky, and with 7 root vegetables, raisins, and cinnamon, I'll cook a delicious stew to welcome the new year. Root vegetables, wondered Talia, for a sweet new year. She lived in the city and had never done much gardening. So taking a shovel from the shed, she walked to the garden. Root vegetables, she thought again, pushing the shovel into the soil. How can a vegetable be rude? Does it annoy its brothers and sisters? Does it talk back to its parents? Talia remembered being bossy to her brother, and she remembered being rude to her parents. Rosh Hashanah is coming, she thought. I must ask their forgiveness. Talia dug up a perfect round onion. Beautiful, she thought, but that's not what Grandma wants. So she put the perfect round onion inside a bushel basket. The next onion she tried to dig would not come out of the ground. She pulled and she tugged and she tugged and she pulled until finally she yanked it free. What an ornery onion, she thought. It won't do what it's told. This must be a rude vegetable. So she put that ornery onion in the pot for Grandma. Then Talia went to the garlic patch rather. She dug up perfect round garlic bulbs. These are gorgeous, she thought, but not what Grandma wants. So she put the perfect round garlic bulbs in the bushel basket. Then she dug up an enormous pinkish purple garlic bulb. What a garish garlic, she said. It seems like a big show-off. This must be a rude vegetable. She put the garish garlic in the pot with the ornery onion, and she carried the pot to where the carrots grew. Talia once again dug up a bunch of long, straight carrots. Wonderful, she thought, but that's not what Grandma wants. So she put the long, straight carrots in the bushel basket. Then she dug up a fat, twisted carrot. What a crooked carrot, she exclaimed. This carrot looks like it was pushing its brothers and sisters around. It certainly is a rude vegetable. So she put the crooked carrot in the pot with the garish garlic and the ornery onion and carried the pot to the turnip patch. Talia then dug up 4 white turnips with beautiful purple tops. Fabulous, she said, but that's not what Grandma wants. So she put the purple and white turnips in the bushel basket. Then Talia dug and dug, but the next turnip wouldn't budge. This terrible turnip, she thought, is just what Grandma wants. So she pulled and dug and pulled and finally wrenched the terrible turnip out of the ground. She put the terrible turnip in the pot with the crooked carrot, the garish garlic, and the ornery onion. Now I have 4 rude vegetables, she counted as she carried the pot to the potato patch. Talia dug up small round potatoes and lumpy bumpy potatoes. She put the small round potatoes in the big bushel basket. The lumpy bumpy potatoes went into the pot with the terrible turnip, the crooked carrot, the garish garlic, and of course the ornery onion. She carried the pot to the parsnip patch. She dug up long, skinny parsnips, and she put them in the bushel basket. Then she dug up a big, ugly parsnip with twisted roots. This is a peculiar parsnip, she said. And she put it in the pot with the lumpy, bumpy potatoes, the terrible turnip, the crooked carrot, the garish garlic, and of course, the ornery onion. So she carried the pot to the rutabagas and smiled. Rutabagas, they are definitely rude. So she dug up rutabagas and put them in the pot with the peculiar parsnip, the lumpy, bumpy potatoes, the terrible turnip, the crooked carrot, the garish garlic, and of course, the ornery onion. Then she sat down to think. Grandma wanted rude vegetables, but surely someone else could enjoy the others. So she left the pot in the garden and carried the bushel basket to the rabbi. Here, Rabbi, she said, handing him the basket. I picked enough vegetables for my grandmother. These are extra. Thank you, Talia, said the rabbi. These vegetables will help another family enjoy a sweet new year. Talia returned to the garden and took the big pot to her grandmother. Grandma, she said, I brought you rude vegetables, just like you wanted. Rude vegetables, her grandmother laughed. They're root vegetables, not root vegetables, and they're very sweet, just like you. The rabbi told me you gave a food for the hungry. What a mitzvah. Now, she said, let's cook the vegetables, bake some cookies, and get ready for the new year. And so they did. And that is Talia and the root vegetables. So, and if you're interested in that book, it's available at your local library, and it's called Talia and the Root Vegetables. So keep in mind, as you're beginning to think about some activities that you can do with your family, here are some examples of some really neat little activities you can do. First of all, let me change a couple things here real quick. I'm sorry about that. But go on a plant hunt with your family and take a picture, draw some pictures, maybe write a poem, or there's an app out that you could use with your smartphone or with your iPhone or your Android, and it's called Seek by iNaturalist. And it's a really neat app. It allows you to identify plants. So maybe take a peek at that. And then maybe go to a website like kidsgardening.org and design and plant your own vegetable garden. And that's a great website. It's called kidsgardening.org. So obviously some really cool ideas to, and if you do any of these things, you put a garden together, send your pictures to education@pbswesternreserve.org, and then we'll make sure we feature them either on our website or on our next presentation. So those are some great activities. We learned about container gardening. And what's funny is that one of the last video that we did talked about this part of this session called composting. So we're going to look at composting, and this is some wonderful pictures of different types of composting, and we'll talk a little bit by the end of this presentation. You'll have a really good idea of what we talk about or what we mean by composting. But as always, once again, we've got a big idea, right? So think about these big ideas. When we throw food away in the trash can, keep in mind it goes to a landfill. And that's where it breaks down very slowly. It takes up a lot of space and can release some harmful methane gas. We can turn food scraps into new soil ourselves by composting. And keep in mind that composting is a process where tiny creatures called microorganisms. So let's break that down for a minute. It's a big word, right? But when you think about the word microorganism, micro means small, like what device do you use to look at small things? A microscope. Well, microorganisms are small little things that help little organisms that help to break down food and other scraps safely outside of the landfills and allow you to create some really healthy soil. Now we'll talk about worms tonight. I'm not going to have any worms for you, but if you add some red wigglers to your compost, if we make the compost tonight, that'll help actually speed up that process. So let's take a closer look. The Cyberchase, this is a clip from Composting in the Clutch, where Jaden will explain how to set up and use a composter. What do you think, and just keep this in mind as you're watching this video, what do you think needs to go into a composter to make new soil? And think about what Jaden talks about. So let's take a closer look.
Stay right where you are. It's Cyberchase for real.
My cousin Kimmy helped me plant vegetables in the community garden. And yesterday, I invited her over to eat what we grew.
There's nothing better than a fresh salad for lunch.
Except when you grow the ingredients yourself.
Oh, look. Here's a tomato that you grew.
Wow.
There's more on the plant, too. Wait, don't throw that out.
Why?
That's food.
That's the food. This is garbage.
Actually, that's food for the plants. They love salad, too.
But these are parts of the plants. Can you please explain?
Okay, when we prepare food to eat, what happens to the scraps?
We throw them out.
Right, and where do they go?
The garbage collectors take it away?
Correct. They take it to an incinerator or a landfill, and neither is good for the environment.
So what should we do that is good for the environment?
Well, we have a composter for all of our fruit and vegetable scraps.
What's a composter?
A composter breaks down the parts of fruits and vegetables that we don't eat and turns them into something nutritious for plants. Let's go outside. I'll show you one. Compost has ingredients that keep the soil healthy and make plants grow better.
What else is in compost besides the food scraps?
There are two main ingredients, green stuff and brown stuff. There's 2/3 brown and 1/3 green. They mix with air and water, and that breaks them down into smaller parts.
But these scraps aren't all green. They're orange from the carrot peels, red from the peppers and radishes.
Greens are fruit and vegetable scraps and grass clippings. Browns are things like dried leaves, twigs, and things like corn husks.
What's in the other side?
This side has been working for a while and is almost ready for the garden. Want to see what it looks like?
Oh, it's a little warm. And look, there's a worm. Is he dessert for the plants?
No, we put worms inside of the compost to get it ready sooner. But there are millions of other little things that you can't see which are helping the compost along.
How can you tell which side of the worm is the head and which is the tail?
You tickle it in the middle and see which side laughs.
So let's think about things for a minute here. Why do you think, what did Jaden put into that composter? He put a lot of different materials in there, like 3 to be exact. But for sure, some of the ones that really stuck out were the brown materials that he talked about, and then the green materials. And what's the difference? And we'll have our next slide will have a little better graphic. Why did Jaden want to compost his food scraps? What was his reasoning for that? And I think we talked about it a bit in the big idea. And the big idea was, one of the big ideas when you want to compost your food scraps is they don't end up in a landfill. And then when you think about your composter, what else do you need in that composter? And Jaden talked about it, and I'll say it again, that'll make it all work. Sometimes it'll make it work faster. And those are those red wiggler worms that we talked about. So Jaden talked about the browns versus the greens. And when we think about those brown versus green scraps, when we say brown scraps, those are the ones that are very carbon rich. And Jaden may have talked about it, but when we do our activity to build our own compost bin, we're going to do, for every one of the green scraps, we're going to do twice as much of the brown scraps. And your brown scraps are everything from dried leaves, straw and hay, pine needles, pine cones, twigs and branches, old newspaper and shredded newspaper and just shredded paper, preferably non-colored paper. We can do shredded cardboard, corn cobs and corn stalks. Believe it or not, a brown carbon-rich item that you can throw in your composter is dryer lint. That stuff that when you go in your dryer to do your clothes, every time you do that, you've got to pull that big wad of dryer lint. You can use that in there. Sawdust, eggshells, and brown paper bags that are shredded. Then on the green side, that's the nitrogen-rich side of what you need in your composter. And you're going to put 1 part of those to every 2 parts of the brown. And you're going to do everything from your green or your table scraps and your fruit scraps and your veggie scraps, your fresh grass clippings, lawn and garden weeds, flowers, seaweed, and kelp if you've got that, coffee grounds, tea leaves. You've got everything from hedge clippings, garden waste, and fresh leaves. Now, what you will notice is that seems like your hedge clippings, corn cobs rather, they kind of show up on both sides. And so they can be considered nitrogen rich depending upon how old they are. So if you've got fresh corn cobs, those are going to be more on the nitrogen-rich green side, fresh corn stalks. But then if you think about in the fall, when you decorate for the fall holidays, you're going to have more dried out corn cobs and more dried out corn stalks. So keep that in mind. So let's talk a minute about our next project, our next activity, which is going to be this composting bin. And so I'm going to open up my video over here, and I'll show you that in a moment here. We're going to make a composting bin. And so what we're going to need is some of the materials that we look at, and I've added this as optional. You can make a composting bin with something as easy as an old jar you might be throwing away, an old mayonnaise jar, or an old pickle jar, maybe an old peanut butter jar. And then make sure you're gathering up those green waste scraps, like your grass clippings. Remember, it's food scraps, all colors. Make sure you're not putting in any dairy or meat or fat or oily products. Then you need your brown waste products, and those are like we talked about, the dried leaves, the pine needles. We're going to put some soil in there also, and then this activity we're going to talk about, we're going to add a thermometer in there, because what we're going to do, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, is that we're going to build this composting bin. And let's just, you know what, let's just go to, I'm going to turn my sharing off. And here's what we got for our composting bin. So I've got just a regular mason jar. This happens to be a plastic mason jar. And I'm going to step through. So my first step in building this is going to be that I want to put some soil in there. So I have some soil that I have, and I'm going to hopefully be able to pour it in here nicely. And I want to put 1 part of soil in my composting bin. So as I put that soil in, it probably won't go in as good as I think. But let me see what I got. I'll do something a little bit better here. Let's see. And we're going to pour some soil in there, and I'm going to make a mess, but that's all right. Let's get all the soil in there. The next stuff is going to be so much easier. I'm trying to get all the soil in there, and I want 1 part of soil. So let me see. I'm probably pretty close. So let me see what we have here. You know, and I'm not even close, am I? So I'll put a little more soil in there, try to stay on camera for you, and try not to make too much of a mess. There we go. Now it's gonna cooperate, huh? So I've got 1 part of soil, and why I say 1 part is if you look on the side of these containers, you'll see that I've got markings. So I'm going to say that I'm at 1 part soil, and then my next step is going to be greens. So I've got greens. If you'll see here, I've got a bunch of leaves that I pulled off the ground. So I'm going to do 1 part leaves. So I'm going to stuff these leaves in there, and I've got some twigs in there too. But remember, twigs fall under that green category, right? If they're fresh. If they're older twigs, then they fall under the brown category. So I'm going to stuff some more leaves in here, and let me push that down. And I got to do 1 part of green. So I think I need a little bit more in there for that. Let me see what we got here. And I'm making a mess, but that's all right. All right. So now I've got, if you look at what I've got here, I've got 1 part green, I've got soil, and I've got 1 part green. And my last one, what's the last one I have to add? It's brown, isn't it? We've got to do brown. And do we do 1 part brown, or I guess it's 2 parts brown. So I've done this. I'm gonna squish all this stuff down here, just to give you a better idea. And I've made my mess here, so I'm gonna pick up the rest of my leaves here. And now I'm gonna put in some leaves, and I've got some nice brown leaves that I just literally just got out of my yard tonight before we started here. And I'm gonna try to put a lot of leaves in here, because I've got to put 2 parts brown leaves. So I've got to stuff that in there a little bit and get that all in there nice. I'm gonna put some more brown leaves in there. And I hope you get an idea of what I've got going on here. I've got some pine needles in here. I've got some brown leaves. I got lots of stuff in here. All right. So now you see you can kind of get an idea. And it may be hard to see with this camera, but you'll see that I might have a little bit too much dirt, but that's all right. I've got 1 part dirt, I've got 1 part green, And then I try to put in 2 parts brown. And then what I want to do is I want to just wet that down. So I'm going to get it all nice and wet, so it all starts to work. Now, another thing that I'm going to add to this is I'm going to add a thermometer, and I'll talk a bit just a bit about that thermometer. So we're going to put that thermometer right along. You can see here, you'll see that thermometer will I probably need to put a little bit lower, but that's all right. So you'll see I've got the thermometer. And what's the deal? And these are these stick-on thermometers. But let's go back to the assignment, and I'm going to go off the screen and I'll go back to my share. And you'll see what I did there is obviously I did the optional, but here are the red wigglers. If you have those, great. But then I have the jar, as you see on my side screen. I've got obviously have greens. I have ground clippings. I have soil. I have a thermometer, and of course, I've got my friends, the rain. I've got water that I can share. So take an opportunity if you're working right now and you've got your jar, you've got all your elements. We're going to watch a video that talks about how you can compost at home for about a little over 4 minutes. And so watch that video, but put that all together. And keep in mind, what I'd love you to do is after you get all this put together, is that the reason for the thermometer is you can begin to explore yourself. So what you'd like to do is as you're doing these composting bins is create a weekly journal to include what's the temperature of your compost bin. Take pictures of your food scraps as you put those in. If you did add worms, what are the worms doing? And then any bad smells, because believe it or not, if you do composting correctly, you shouldn't have any, believe it or not, you shouldn't have any bad smells. So let's watch this video and let's see about composting, but work on your own while we watch this video.
The average American tosses out 219 pounds of food a year. Now, even if you're not from the States, I bet you can clean up your food waste habits. Composting is an amazing way to do that. For more amazing free content like this, remember to subscribe, hit that like button, and hit the notification bell so you know when we post new videos. Now, let's get into how to compost. Now, before you freak out, remember that worms are great for your soil and they're great for your compost. Composting with worms is called vermicomposting, but you don't have to use worms. Whether you use worms or not, there are 3 things that everyone needs in their compost: browns, greens, and water. Browns are dried leaves, newspaper, paper, shavings. Greens are veggies, fruits, and water is a moist environment. Once you have those 3 things, you need to figure out which system is best for you. One of the easiest may be just to dig a trench or a hole in your garden, or even your backyard, and put food in the hole, and then cover it back up and let the food decompose naturally. The second option is to have an open bin, which makes for a great hot composter. You can also buy a tumbler, which is better for cold composting, but it also allows you not to have to do manual turning with a pitchfork. Our last option for you may be preferable for smaller apartments or for urban areas because it is neat, but it does have a capacity. It also makes it a little bit harder to harvest the material because of the size of the composting bin. But nonetheless, in the description box down below, we'll give you a link to how to make your own with the trash barrel. You're probably also wondering what else you need to do for your composting system. Well, you need to turn it. There's really no rule of thumb as to how often you're supposed to turn your compost. Usually it is 3 to 4 days, but if you have a hot composting system, it'll be a week. If it's cold and it's one of the turning ones, you would do it every other day, but it also does depend on the materials that are going in the compost. Rule of thumb, don't turn it too often because you do want the inside of the compost to fully complete the process before you turn it. Now, what do you put in the compost? Well, we did touch on this previously. but you need a mixture of browns, so leaves, dry straw, paper. You also need a mixture of greens, like fruits and veggies, coffee grounds, and even eggshells. But you cannot put any meat products in there whatsoever. No meat or dairy products. This beautiful infographic, which you can find in the description box down below, pretty much sums up what you should put in and what you shouldn't put in. Okay, so now your compost is making its magic. When do you know it's ready? When the compost starts to look like rich brown earth and doesn't smell like rotting vegetables, that's when you know it's ready. This could take up to 3 months or even 2 years, depending on the size and the materials that you use in the compost. You're probably wondering what you're going to do with all these used-to-be veggies that are now beautiful, nutrient-filled compost. You can use compost on tree bedding. You can sprinkle it on a flower bed or a garden in order to supply nutrients to the plants. Once it rains, the nutrients will soak through the soil, and your garden will be the best it's ever looked. You can also mix compost with topsoil for a better effect, and make your own personal potting soil for your plants at home and for the garden. Just remember that compost doesn't substitute soil. It works best when mixed with soil and watered properly. Compost provides nutrients to plants. You can take vitamins every day, but you still need to eat food and drink water. This is the same for plants. Next time you go shopping, try to only buy what you know you will eat, and things that are mostly fresh. Because if you don't finish your dinner, at least you can know it can go in the compost. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe. Leave a comment down below telling us what you think of this video, and we'll see you at the next one.
So hopefully you got pretty far with your compost or composting bin. And remember, you've got to do your green scraps, your brown scraps, your soil. You're going to do 1 inch of green. You're going to do, or 2 parts rather. You're going to water if you want to add those red wigglers. And they talked in the video about basically turning your compost. You can do that very easily with your jar. It's just once a week, just very gently shake the container to mix up the materials, and then take that opportunity to create that compost observation journal. And in that journal, you'll want to just kind of keep track of when the temperature goes up weekly. You know, what's the temperature this week? What are the pictures of the food scraps? And if you've added worms, what are the worms doing? Well, speaking of worms, we're going to take an opportunity to read a great book. It's about Kyle, who is a red wiggler, and he is in a compost pile. So this book is available. This is a story of a red wiggler by Julie Lehman. So let me stop my share here. Let me get that all going here. And let's read a book about Kyle in his compost pile. Kyle in his compost pile, the story of a red wiggler, written by Julie Lehman and illustrated by Joshua Allen. Kyle will just sit and smile. He loves living in his compost pile. See the compost pile? Every day is something new. Good things yellow, maybe blue, maybe orange, maybe red. Here's the food thrown on his head. We've got orange peels and apple cores and corn. Looks like blueberries. Those are all falling on Kyle's head. Today is brown banana peel. Hungry Kyle starts to squeal. What comes next, he can't foresee. In come squash and pears and leaves. So far, we seem to have lots of green, huh? Yummy, yummy, eat it up. What a treat, a paper cup. Here's a pumpkin and its seeds rather. Kyle now knows it's, what time of year? I guess that would be Halloween. Chomp and swallow, more to chew. What is this? It's something new. It tastes so good. What could it be? His friends all say it's broccoli. And in the background, you see carrots. More good food he's yet to find, spinach and a melon rind. Paper shreds and coffee grounds, it sure tastes better than it sounds. Now Kyle really wants a steak, a drink of milk, a piece of cake. What do you think about that? Remember what she talked about? I don't know. What do you think? That would certainly, it sure would make his compost pile stink. Remember what she just said a bit ago? No dairy, no meat, no oil. Why doesn't Kyle like, you ask, plastic, aluminum, and glass? They poke him, they cut him, they take up space. Consider those recyclable waste. And I'm having troubles getting this page turned. Sorry about that. Kyle's tummy starts to ache. He surely needs to take a break. So Kyle starts to close his eyes. Holy cow, a big surprise. Veggies of all colors come. Keep on eating, yum. More food in, then more food out. Wait, what's that process all about? It might be gross, I have to say, but I can't help it. It's my way. Now my job's to sit and rest, and you can use what I digest. How do you use the compost now? You spread it all around the ground on gardens and planters with your hoe. Kyle knows it helps them grow. And that is Kyle in his compost pile. And that is available at your local library if you have an opportunity to pick that up or talk to your local librarian. It's Kyle, who's the red wiggler. And like we talked about, you don't always have to do the worms, but certainly you can add those. One of the family activities we're going to talk about here in a bit is building your own compost pile. And let me do a quick change here. I'm going to do this change. I apologize. Let me get this. And now I'm back. Hold on, let me get back to you here. All right. So let's think about compost piles or different ways to compost. You learned tonight how to do it in a little jar, and you learned kind of the basics of that. But there's all different types of compost. The one story talked about, or the one video we watched talked about digging a hole in the ground in your garden. You can do that. You can put some bricks up. You can build a pile like they show on the one side over here. We show a compost pile that's in the ground. Here's just an example over here that's just fencing, and you put, kind of that garden fence, so to speak. So those are some options for you if you want to take your composting to the next level. And the family activities I'll talk about is, if you get an opportunity, is to go outside and observe a farm or a garden that composts. And then ask the farmer or ask the gardener, it might be someone in your neighborhood, ask them why they've been composting, and maybe they have different piles of compost that you could take a look at. And then what I just showed you there is you could build your own composter. So you could build an even bigger version of that. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much for being around this evening. This is our Cyberchase Green It Up. This was session 2. We talked about composting. We talked about container gardens, both things that I've got sitting on my shelf, getting ready to catch the sun and begin my composting. We have our wrap up tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It's Appreciating Nature and the big finale. And the big finale, we're going to talk about what you can do in your neighborhood that might be an issue in your neighborhood. You might want to get your neighbors to do more composting, or maybe get your neighbors to do more community gardens, or build a pollinator garden for all those pollinators. We learned about that last night. So keep that in mind. That's tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We certainly appreciate your time. If you go in the upper right corner, you'll see a QR code. That'll take you to our project website. And on that project website are all different materials in regards to some videos. Last night's video should get there soon. And we've got last year's videos that we did, as well as a link to the national site of Cyberchase Green It Up. And if I do get some folks that reach out in these virtual lessons, we will be sending out some really cool Cyberchase Green It Up, a family activity guide, and some cool Cyberchase Green It Up jotter notebooks for you to keep track, just like you kept track of the temperature on your composting bin. So those are available. So once again, I thank you so much for your time this evening. My name's Jeff. I'm with PBS Western Reserve, and we certainly appreciate all that you do, and we appreciate you being part of the PBS family. Have a great night, everyone.